Hi everyone and welcome along to Sonic Academy with me, Chris. Today I have the pleasure of chatting to an American DJ and producer who these days is based in a bunker in Switzerland. He burst onto the scene in 2006 with the anthem that is Lift, and we started our sets for about 18 months with that track, and it just brings back so many great memories. He's here today to chat about his new album, Degeneration. Please welcome to Sonic Academy the one, the only, Sean Tyas. Hi Sean, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, and it's good to be here. Thank you for having me on.
No problem, Sean. Thank you so much for coming on to Sonic Academy. It's a real pleasure having you here. First off, congratulations, dude, on the album. It is absolutely incredible. It's a brilliant, brilliant album, and probably within a week, it's probably in my top 5, if not top 3 trance albums of all time. It is that good. A few weeks ago or last week I read a post on Facebook from John Ashku just saying how much you've raised the bar with this album, and I kind of went, oh, okay, I better go and check this out, and by track 3 you're hooked. How do you feel about the album finally coming out?
Yeah, I mean, it's been number one. I guess the first word that pops into mind is a relief. Mm-hmm. It's as you know, it's just a lot of work that goes into it, and the concept was to do this way. The tracks we're not like, we can get the tracks into people's hands, earlier. With Black Hole, they were cool with, with me doing EP releases throughout as kind of like an album teaser throughout last year.
Yeah.
And now the whole album, as far as like a full, finished product, like the CD and the booklet inside, I'm like, it's so cool to see, and I really like it. I like the concept. I was going to say to myself, like, this might be the first album and probably going to be the last one too, because of the amount of stress involved. But I kind of, at the end of it, when you look back, I'm like, that was good learning and good discipline. I maybe want to do this again.
I suppose one of the surprising things for me was you hadn't done an album before, and I kind of was like, I could have sworn that I've seen John Tyas albums, because you put out so much stuff. I always thought there must be a Sean Tyas album. So why did it take so long? Why did it take nearly 10 years to get to the album format?
It was all that. A big part of it was, of course, the mentality of sitting on tracks and waiting to release them all as one, as one full album, as opposed to being, the immediacy of releasing singles and to get it out, sometimes in less than a month after you've even finished it in the studio. And I like that immediacy, because tastes change, especially in the studio. You get bored of a track rather quickly, especially when you're going and play it 3 times, up to 3 times in the clubs every weekend. It could get, it just gets to the point where, okay, am I going to release an album? I'm still going to like all the tracks by the time it's release day.
Okay.
And that was definitely the concept here, but the idea was to just, I forgot what the actual question was. But
how long did it take to make? Why did it take so long to make an actual album?
Well, yeah, it's exactly that. I would stockpile a few tracks and then say, okay, this is going to be album tracks. This is like consistently happening over the past 8 years. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to release that as a single, and then another one would get chipped away, and it would come down to 0 tracks again in that folder.
And would you say that's, are you impatient? You're down to get stuff out and just wants to let people hear everything?
I'm very impatient.
And so, take us back. Who persuaded you to say, right, stop, let's get a body of work together? How did the whole sort of album idea formulate, and how did it come up? Why at this point in time did you start holding tracks back and building the album?
Well, I mean, John Askew does my management, and we had talked about this, especially early on when he started representing me, and he said, obviously he said, we have to do this. So, it was pretty daunting to be told that, and we started putting together proposed track lists. As you know, when you're producing, you create tons of 32 bar, 64 bar, 32 bar, 64 bar, bass lines and just basic riffs, and they get side shelved, and you wouldn't even come back to them sometimes for 2 years. Mm-hmm. The idea was to now focus and literally start tracks with the intention of it going on the album, and not do anything else with that.
And so then, how did you approach? I mean, because let's talk about the sound of the album. It's not a trance album. It is. There's dubstep on there. There's
no dubstep.
Well, okay. There's some bass wobble. There's dark techno undertones. There's tech house. There is trance. There is it's, and I think that stands it in good stead, is that there's this variety of styles and stuff in there. Was that intentional, or is this sort of through the course of writing, did that come out?
Completely. It was 100% intentional. I've been really tinkering around with drum and bass for the last 2 years, that drum and bass I just look at as a genre that's got a ridiculously high level of, a technique to it. And, I really wanted to get that right. So that took me, and I always wanted drum and bass to go on whatever artist album I was going to be doing. So, that was another aspect that would have held me back, because I just when drum and bass, you don't just go out in day one in drum and bass and make a fat drum and bass track. It takes time to figure out how to do it, because this is just one of the genres. Then you're looking at breaks, which was also I had to do a little research and had to really figure out the right way to approach it. I mean, like, the current breed of breaks that you're going to find on Beatport is completely different to the breaks style that I was doing. I did something more like the Beatman and Ludmilla or Escherik's kind of style breaks, as opposed to the booty breaks, like the Miami booty breaks that you're going to find all over the charts on Beatport. Then techno and psytrance as well.
So, I mean, it does sound like you just absorb all sort of musical genres that you get lost in and how did you pick apart, say you're approaching, you want to make a drum and bass track on your album. How do you go, right, how do I do this? What's your sort of strategy to get understanding that genre?
You just have to really, really listen to other people that are at the top of their game in that sound, and then you get a feel for what is the right way to approach. I'm not saying on a creativity level, but on a mathematical studio production level, you need to know, okay, this snare is going to need to get processed in this particular way. A snare and drum and bass is going to have way more bass end in it than, for example, a snare or a clap that's used on the 2 and the 4 in trance. Usually filter all that, you high pass it, so it's just the high end. But in drum and bass, it needs to have a very pronounced 200 to 300 hertz region, and that's just totally different. And then you got, for example, techno, you'd like a lot more mids and highs to be in your bass lines, for example, whereas in techno, no, filter it all right down, and it doesn't even need to be in key, and it's usually better if it's not.
I mean, do you need to do this as a producer? You need to flex your production muscles, otherwise you just become really staid and boring. So how do you play that with an audience? With a fan base that Sean Tyas for a particular sound. How does that play out?
That was interesting. I was really not really, but definitely a little concerned that people were going to go, where's all the trance? I mean, you know what? It's an album. That's that's the point. It's not a single. People want a trance track from me. Yeah, I mean, of course there are plenty of trance tracks on the double CD album, of course, but it was exactly that. I just wanted a chance to really exercise, the right to go explore, and that's what an album is totally for. If you listen to some of the best albums in history, like Moby, The Prodigy, there's not a consistent. No track sounds like another on these albums.
No, I completely agree, and I think that's the biggest thing with the album is that you have explored and you get brought into that exploration with you, and that's what I absolutely adored about the album from the start. I mean, there's tracks playing in the background now, it's just like, wow. You don't call it dubstep, so what would you call it? Like tracks like Contrast and stuff. What
Contrast is dance floor drum and bass.
Right, okay.
Yep.
How do you produce the wobbles in that? What sort of synth were you using there?
Oh man, that was a lot, and it was a lot of audio editing. I think Contrast on CD1 was definitely the most technical track of everything, but a lot of the stuff was like, obviously it's a cliche synth, but it's very capable. Native Instruments, Massive does an amazing job, but a lot of it, I would do something in Massive and make a very, very long bass note, like maybe like a 4-bar or 2-bar bass note, and then put it into a sampler, and then that's how you get some great. And then you put it, with pitch bending and stuff like that. There's a lot of pitch bending, a lot of crazy filtering. You do like parallel filter. Like with Ableton is great because you set up a rack and you do, you could split the signal, so then you have the same exact signal going up here, and then you'd say put a low pass filter on the top layer, and then the bottom layer is identical to before it got filtered. So then you'd say put a double notch filter in the middle. And then and you could even do maybe make another layer with a high pass, and then automate all these things differently.
And you just get these huge filtery sweeps that are happening that are just moving
creates
around.
The sweeps.
And you're amongst bending that, and then would you resample those and then re-edit those, or is it all about sort of rebouncing and just
drum and bass was based on resampling, like even from the start when you're talking about Ed Rush and Optical and that kind of that level of production, and these guys were pioneers in it, and that started back with the Akai, or what was it, one of the Emu ones, right?
Emulators and stuff.
The emulator, exactly. And that was a big part of the drum and bass sound. And now everybody's kind of emulating that artifact on those particular synths and on those particular samplers. So it was, obviously I don't have access to the Akai, I don't have access to the emulator, though there's a really good, I think it's PC only, emulator.
Okay.
But there's ways of doing it.
And what about I loved also, one thing I struggle with and I would love to get my head around more is you have a dark vocal in there. What would you use for vocal processing? What sort of chains, what's your go-to plugins for the vocal processing?
For vocal, I've gotten really, really into sound toys lately. I bought the version 5 whole bundle, and figures they put it on sale like 2 weeks later for $200 less than I paid. I was like, bastards. But I mean, some of the plugins in there are insane. I also use a lot of the built-in Ableton different warping algorithms for changing pitch and stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Does a very good job with that on its own. But then for widening a vocal and stuff like that, there's micro shift in the Sound Toys bundle, which is awesome. It basically just creates like a little bit of chorus, but it's very subtle, and you have 3 different algorithms that do a really good job with that. And then there's another one called Little Alter Boy, which is you can shift the performant or the pitch or link that, and that's a sick plugin also.
And I mean, these are taking cues from drum and bass, and probably, is it taking cues from dubstep, Skrillex processing or not?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't feel weird about saying that I love Skrillex's stuff anyway. I think he's a fucking unreal producer. And that was probably what put me over the edge, where it was when I first heard Skrillex stuff years ago. I was like, wow, you know what? I'm a shit producer. and I really need to up my game a lot. And that's what started me on this sound design journey to keep pushing.
Yeah, no, like I have a friend who works with U2, and he's mixed a lot of U2 stuff, and they all just listen to Skrillex and go, sonically he just makes us sound shit. When they listen to his stuff and then go back to making their rock thing, they just go, my God, this sounds so old and dated. And it's hard for even rock guys go and listen to his sonic interpretations of things are just incredible.
Yeah.
When we're talking about vocal processing, and we've talked about the sort of darker end of vocal processing, tracks like Something in the Way and wait, is it Reach or no? What's the other
Reach
vocal
Out?
track?
Yeah.
How do you produce vocals when it's the trancier end of vocals? Do you get involved in the vocal writing? Do you
so you mean like Something in the Way and Start Over with Cindy?
Yeah. So how do you approach the vocal writing? Do you get the singer involved, or do you get involved in the writing, or do you leave it entirely up to the singer, or how do you approach that?
Well, with 2 totally different approaches for each of those tracks, actually. With Something in the Way with Fisher, she had written the entire vocal and just handed the vocal to me.
Okay.
And made the track out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 90% sure that's how it went. That was one of the older tracks on the album, so it's been a while.
Okay.
And that track, of course, had been through like 4 completely different versions before it was finalized. That was one hell of a journey. With Start Over, that was originally written by songwriter Dave Wright, who did a great job, and he had sung it in his voice. And a male voice wasn't maybe necessarily the right voice for the single. And Dave had suggested, absolutely, take on another singer for this. Let's see how it goes. And Cindy Zanotta that sang that single, she's 15 years old, and she just started taking vocal lessons only months ago.
Right.
So that blew my mind. Like, she comes out, like, she's an au pair from a neighbor down the block here locally. And my neighbor was always telling me, you got to hear her sing. She's gonna come over and sing for you today. I'm like, okay. So she comes over here and she belts out like an Amy Winehouse track in my studio, and she belts out an Adele track. I'm like, wow, you're really good. Obviously, you've been practicing those songs. But I said, here, tell you what, take a copy of this. And it was, the demo done with Dave Wright's vocals. And I said, practice singing that and you can make your own interpretation, trick it out a bit. And then she came back twice in 2 different recording sessions. The second one was more or less to correct some pronunciation issues, because English is not her native language.
Okay.
So.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was cool. She did really good, and it was a good exercise for me because I've never actually recorded vocals in my own studio before. So that was a really good test run. I love this mic.
And what mic did you use for the
SE20, the Studio Electronics? I think it stands for Studio Electronics. SE2200E.
And how do you then process the vocals when you get them in? Do you use, is it Ableton plugins, or is it Waves or UAD, or what? Have you got a particular vocal chain that what compressor do you go to?
Let's think. I definitely, I like the basic approach. I'm still a huge fan of the Renaissance plugins from Waves. And I threw a Renaissance Vox on there, and that already clears up most of the issues. And then when it comes to de-essing, I don't use de-essers. I just do it. I literally I set up effects racks with the macros on it, and I kind of make my own manual de-esser, so it takes a little bit more time. So you literally zoom in, you find the T's, the D's, and the S's, and all that stuff, and they dips those frequencies. I'll have it automated to dip those frequencies only when they're hit.
Okay.
So I'm not relying on a computer like a computer algorithm to detect it, and then you have so much more control, and as a result, you can blast the vocals a lot louder because you have complete control, and you're not trusting the machine to make that call for you.
So are you going in hand drawing in the automation to remove those frequencies throughout the whole vocal?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And it wasn't too long of a vocal, so it's not so. We're talking. How many vocals? It never really takes that long. A couple hours, and you're really good.
And would you do the same for volume automation? Would you sort of put a leveler compressor on, but then go on and go in and adjust manually the level?
Yeah, I'll never do it on the channel. I'll always do it with a utility plugin, so I don't have to. So this way, the gain stage is reserved for just the mix down.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go on to for me, the track that stands out, and this is me, is 9 a.m. And probably as well Ambush. They're just sublime pieces of sort of really dark, techie techno. How did you? What's inspired you to get those tracks going?
Techno is something that's, I think everybody that's into dance music, almost nobody can say anything bad about techno. It's one of the longest lasting. It's always one of the most cutting edge, and it's got no rules. It's probably the only genre that has really no rules. Maybe they say, okay, you maybe lay back on the big chord progressions and the melodies, but apart from that might be the only rule.
Yeah.
That's just awesome. It was fun to tackle that, and I look forward to doing more techno as well.
And when you're approached, we know that when you're doing the drum and bass stuff, you obviously go to massive and stuff. When you're doing trance, I presume you're going to things like Silent. When you go to techno, what's your go-to synth there?
For the baseline of 9 a.m. was definitely Silent. Silent is my go-to. It's such a bread and butter synth, and it's so hard to top it. I know you got other stuff like Spire, and I've seen, I've done the banks for Spire with Darren Porter, and but Spire, the way it's laid out, and the fact that it still uses an old school modulation matrix kind of turns me off. I like the quick. I love the routing systems of Massive, of Serum, like where you drag the envelope number to the knob and then you're routed. There's no, even though Serum has a modulation matrix, you very rarely actually need to go there. You just drag from, source to the target, to the target. Massive just does it so elegantly. I still think Massive is the best routing I've seen ever for modulation. There's no modulation matrix because you just don't need it. Silent is also really good, but it's a simple synth, so it doesn't really need one.
Yeah, it's a simple synth that sounds incredible is the thing, and it's very versatile. Is sound design important to you? Do you like the process of sound design, or are you a guy that grabs presets and tweaks them?
I like sound design more than I like making music.
Is that right? Yeah. Oh wow! And what do you love about sound design?
I just love the fact that you get there. I like to reverse engineer people's tracks. I love to I like that sound. Let's figure out how it's put together, and let's spin it off so this way I can use it for myself with my own touch on it. I don't really like presets so much, even though I make them and sell them. But I think you can get things done so much quicker if you just, especially with Silent. That's an immediate, very immediate synth. You can get almost any patch you need in less than a couple of minutes.
Well, I think you're if you want to make a techno track and sound design, you can instantly within 5 minutes get in the area, whereas you could spend 30 minutes just going
That's what I'm saying. One after another, and there's so many preset banks that are shit, and or maybe too many effects. But to find the sound and then to tweak it sometimes will take longer than to make it from scratch.
Brilliant. Do you use any hardware? Do you have any Nord leads, any viruses, any external stuff?
Just the Virus TI Snow. That's lasted. Yeah, I mean, I had the full keyboard for a while, and I'm like, this is overkill. I never use more than 3 or 4 parts on this at maximum anyway. I'm like, I'm just gonna sell the keyboard and get the Snow, because the Snow is 4-part, and that's all I'll ever need. And I rarely ever use that because it's so unstable.
Do you when you're making tracks, Sean? I mean, you've obviously got this big full sound. That's what you're known for. Are you quite economical, or do you layer, bounce, layer, or how do you work?
I'm really chaotic in that regard. I'm actually looking at a project right now, and it's like, I think we're up to, and the project's just started, and I'm up to 119 channels. I guarantee you I'm not using most of them. Like usually there'll be like 7 muted bass lines that were like me playing with different kick and bass interplay. Okay. And I'm like, okay, now that bass line sounds good, but maybe this will sound better if I make it with Massive, so I'll try to do the same exact patch. And if you make a bit like similar patch with Massive versus Silent versus Serum versus say UHE Hive, which is a new one which I really like too. And yeah, it's just it's really chaotic. I should also label better too. I don't do that enough either.
Are you bad housekeeping? Have you got tracks all? Can you keep track of everything when you get like that, or does it get messy?
When it gets to a certain point, which I apparently haven't done with this track yet, when it gets to a certain point, I'll break it up into groups in Ableton. And then I'll color code the groups with white channel color, and it's like kick on one group, and that'll also include like bass drops that go like boo. I'll put that on the kick group, and then the next one is bass. Next one is sub bass. So like bass would include all the mid basses and anything that's bassy of an element. Sub bass is only the bottom of the frequency spectrum. FX and fills is one group. The bus group, same thing. Synths and leads, and that also includes like piano and stuff like that. Vocals, I think that's it. And maybe sometimes if the acid of a track needs to take center stage, I'll put them on their own group as well.
Okay. And when you're starting to try, let's talk about sort of drums and stuff. How do you use loops and chop them up, or do you program in drum racks, or do you have kits built that you go to and just start firing? How do you start a track? Is it drum loops, or do you start with a melodic sort of theme?
Years ago, I mean, I would layer up like something like 7 or 8 different loops and filter them all differently so they kind of come to a cohesive whatever. But now I've been more into just single hits, especially with me doing a lot more psytrance lately. It's less loop. You don't really find so many loops in psytrance. It's more about the single hits and making the best you can. And it's very similar in techno too. Doing the current techno, not like the ambush style techno, like more like like 9 a.m. Most of it's just one shots, and then just really process to hell. On a closed hi-hat, maybe you'll obviously you'll high pass it to hell, slam the highs up even more, and then put like just a sample delay on one side, so you get the Haas effect to widen that closed hat by say right side 9 milliseconds, and you get super wide, super loud closed hi-hat.
Brilliant. I mean, that's again. One of the questions I was going to ask you is about. We've had a couple of psytrance courses on the site, and they both used sampled bass lines. Are you using sample, or is it from a song synth?
Fuck no.
No. What are you using?
I don't believe in using the sampled bass. I believe in earning it. So that and I'm still on my little crusade to find out what is the best bass synth for psytrance. And I mean, it's really a toss-up between Massive and Silent. I'm having a great time with both of those. Also get good results with Ors Heckman's Hive. That's also an awesome synth. Zebra's good too. But Zebra, I find to be, Serum is not really for that kind of bass, but Zebra, a lot of people say Zebra's great for psytrance bass. I disagree. I don't think it's that good for it, but...
Well, these guys were using samples from an old Oberheim. That's what they were using, a one-shot sample for their
That's the thing.
Yeah.
With Sight, you have to resample the bass. Every bass note has got to have like that click of the attack, so it needs to be a re-trigger on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the main thing about it. And most of them will put it through a sampler, or just put literally. I prefer to do it. Just put it on audio track. Have quick fade outs after each 16th note, and you just do it that way, and it gets a super super ridiculously tight sound.
So do you love getting really intricate with the audio and getting in and trimming stuff, and you could go into really that's where you thrive on that sort of in that area? Yeah.
I guess so. As long as I'm hearing that it's improving the sound and the groove.
Yeah.
If it's not, then I'll just skip it and go and literally just leave it in MIDI.
Do you feel under pressure in the studio to churn stuff out, or do you? I mean, do you work quickly, or you kind of? I mean, I was a total disaster in the studio. It would take me 3 weeks to write a track, and and it always ended up not being that good. So, can you churn stuff out in a couple of days, or does it take weeks?
The only reason it would take weeks to finish most tracks for me is because I start so many things on a particular day. And on one particular day, I'll usually work on anywhere from 2 to 5 different tracks in the same day, because I just get ADD. I'm like, oh, I have an idea, but it's not going to work in this track. Mm-hmm. Let's load up this project and integrate it or try it out. And that could be the next 2 hours of my work day. And then, let's go back to this other project. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm bored for today. Let's go work on something, drum and bass, for example, or something. It just keeps it interesting.
Yeah, I'm imagining you as a kid here going, geez, you must have been exhausting.
I still am.
So the other thing, you start really early in the morning as well. You start at like 5 a.m. What's that about?
It started a couple of years ago when I started waking up this early in the morning. It started because of jet lag.
Right.
And as a result, I started go downstairs. It's like 2 or 3 hours before anybody in the house wakes up. It's pitch black outside. I have a coffee. I'm like going down the studio. Like the whole world is not even awake yet. I'm like, I feel like I have a head start on the day. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Granted, I go to sleep really early too. Like I'm usually sleeping by 9 or 10.
It's all right.
Ridiculously early.
You've got the whole DJ clock the wrong way around. You should be going to bed.
It's upside down. and everyone's like, how are you even awake at your gigs? I'm like, because you know what? That's when it flips, and it's okay then.
Okay. So, is the studio located in your house? It looks to me like this. I always imagine it's some sort of underground bunker you've got. Is it located in the house?
It basically is a bunker. It's in the house on the entry level floor. So, all the walls are actually concrete, and that's a very big acoustic no-no. So the first thing when I moved in is I basically carpeted every last inch of the room before even putting up the tiles up.
Yeah.
But it helped immensely. The actual the sound treatment pads were the biggest help in this room, because once I had gone for about a year before I even put the pads on, and with the carpeting it was decent. It sounds pretty dead. With the carpeting off, it'll echo for like a second. It was insane. I was like, oh, this is going to be a rough room to be doing production in.
Yeah.
And so the carpeting went up. I'm like, oh, that's massive improvement. And then I put these guys on, and this was like the best. I highly recommend it to get a sound treatment pack. And it's like €600. You get this massive box of tiles, so they're all over. And literally, once I put them on and played a track that I was so used to hearing at a certain volume level, the perceived volume level had dropped significantly, very noticeably. What that meant to me was that I had been listening to probably 40% volume that was just reflections in the room.
Yeah, okay.
That's very, very, very dangerous.
Yeah. And do you think that the sound quality of the album, the mix sound of the album, it's really tight?
Thank you.
How do you approach mixing? Are you clinical, or are you kind of just, let's get it done?
You know what? I know that at the end of the day, when people, I kind of do it with the approach. I still, even though it was for the album, I kind of approach tracks like as if they're going to be played in the club. Once it gets slammed through the club limiter, very little of your little 1 dB decision changes are going to make much of a difference. So, but I do really, really spend a lot of time with the mix downs. Mastering, I don't do so much. I slap a limiter on the master, push it a bit, and pull the ceiling down to minus 0.03, and I leave it there. So basically, that's my master as I go. So everything is done in the mix.
What's the go-to compressor? What compressor do you love the sound of and just know that you can really get into it? I mean, again, is it Ableton's own, or?
Ableton's, we got blessed with the glue as of Ableton version 9, and I think it sounds awesome when you drive it. Mm-hmm. There's other ones I use. There's a transient shaper called the Shack Transient Shaper, and that thing is fucking amazing. And even if you don't use the transient shaping on it, because it's got a little drive knob that does something, I can't even put my finger on exactly why. To quote that idiot Carnage, it just makes it kind of super loud, and it just you turn this knob, and it's a saturation, it's a drive saturation, so but it does a great job with making your sound. You'll see the level. Okay, the best way to describe it is you want a sound to be louder, so basically you see your meter, and you're like, okay, it can't go any louder because the meter is clipping. So you turn this drive knob and you slowly turn it, and you'll see that your level will come down on your mixer, and you're like, okay, but I didn't hear any perceived volume loss. So then, as a result, you can turn your channel up even more. It's awesome, really cool.
What do you call that plugin?
Shack Audio, SCHAACK. And the developer is an amazingly nice guy, and he did a fucking great job with probably the best transient shaper I've ever seen.
I'm going to go and check that out straight after this. This is part of my job here as well, as I quiz people on what are you using for that, how are you doing that, and then as soon as I nonchalantly say goodbye, I'm going, let's find out.
These are great interviews. I mean, these are awesome things for good resources for people to get into new plugins. Exactly.
Absolutely, and it's for me to get into new plugins, but also I love talking to you. Everybody loves talking about production. We're all nerds at heart, and we all love.
I'm like a little kid. I totally geek out anywhere I go.
Let's get on to DJing. How's this? You have a young family and you live in Switzerland, which you've obviously got to travel for nearly 99% of your gigs. So how do you work the studio, the family, and the DJing these days?
It's a benefit. It's a real benefit to have the studio based in the house. When I start the day so early, start the day I have like 2 hours on my own in the studio. Kids start waking up. The two older girls, they're 6, 4, and 1, so it's quite the range. But the two older girls are already going to kindergarten, so we all have breakfast at the table together. I see them off for school, and then I go back to the studio. But meanwhile, I've already had 2 to 3 hours in the studio working wise. Then of course they come back home for lunch. We have lunch all together, and we have dinner all together later. So I see my kids all day, and then at 6 o'clock I end my studio day. Almost never ever, or very rarely, in the studio past 6 p.m.
And what about social media after 6 p.m.? Is it?
That'll always raise that usually just raises the wife's eyebrow. My wife's eyebrows. She's like, get off your phone.
Yeah.
So I'm not too bad with it. I mean, some people tweet literally every 20 minutes, and I don't have anything interesting to say every 20 minutes.
I don't have anything interesting to say every 20 days. Is the problem? Who wants to know what I'm doing? We all probably were slightly older here in Sonic, and we struggle with the whole social media stuff. How have you? You've been going since 10 years now, probably. What's been the biggest single change that you've noticed in the last 10 years?
In the whole scene?
Yeah.
I think
just with yourself,
Probably the explosion of dance music in America.
Okay, right.
That's put a real big change, of course, with the massive festivals. I love a good festival, of course. It's just it's a bit of a shame because it takes so much attention off of that great club experience that we grew up in. I think a lot less attention is paid to the clubs, and that's the heart of the scene. Let's be honest. The club is the art. That's arguable, of course, but the club is the heart of the dance music scene, especially the underground dance music scene, and I do miss that attention being spent on the clubs. Of course, there are still great clubs out there, but they shut down like crazy.
Yeah. No, it's when we 2006, you could name all the big clubs around the world. You could name Zook's and the one in Scotland we used to always play.
The Arches.
The Arches and
dude, that was a very big loss, especially for the European scene. On that day, it closed.
Absolutely, but now you would struggle to find. Name me the big trance club in the UK. Name me, the big club in Germany, or outside of the Exchange in LA. You've got the few clubs in Las Vegas. What's the big club? Government's gone now, isn't it?
I know. That's a massive loss.
Yeah,
exactly.
So it is a real quandary, because the festivals have become so big. Have they taken so much money out of the weekly clubbing thing? How do you approach your touring and stuff now? Do you plan tours or just travel where the dates take you?
I just travel where the dates take me. That's what booking agents are for, and they're doing a great job. So I'm a good traveler. Jet lag doesn't kill me too bad. I can sleep on long flights. I just go where they send me. I like to travel, and I always bring all my toys. I bring my laptop, my iPad, my iPhone, my PSP Vita. I have as many toys as humanly possible to keep me busy.
And also, you get away from 3 screaming kids is always a good one, isn't it?
You know what? That's an amazing dynamic of the whole thing. When you get a little stressed out at home because it's a little intense, you go and reset yourself. Go do some DJ gigs. That's not exactly relaxing either, but it's just a different thing. And you come back missing the kids again, and you're just so ready to go. You just hug my girls. I'm like, yeah, it's awesome.
And then about a week later, the girls are ready for you to go again. They're going, God, I wish you'd just leave and go to DJ.
That's going to happen in probably about 10 years when they start going teenagers. Dad, just go. I'm like, okay, I'm sure that's coming.
Yeah. And where's the real hotspots for you at the moment? Where, what countries are feeling the vibe, and where's changed?
I think, I'm really. I just got back from Australia and Asia. And Australia, Asia is always Asia's always an interesting market. I went to Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, and then two awesome parties. And
where'd you do in Singapore? Is Zouk still where it is, or is it closed?
Zouk's still open, but Zouk is, for the most part, a little bit more of a big room sound still. Yeah. I played over at a club called Trace, and I gotta say, they were really into their trance there, like freaking awesome. So that was an awesome night, and Kuala Lumpur, also insane clubbers over there. So both of them fantastic. But Australia, I gotta say, this has been, I don't want to call it a sleeping giant, because it's always been very friendly to the club scene. It might actually be the last time I've seen you, actually.
Was Australia, was it?
It might have been.
Oh,
when you were puffing your e-cig in the Melbourne airport. I think that might have been.
Finally kicked the habit about 5-6 years
ago.
Yeah,
good for you. I have not. I keep failing, but
dear.
I guess after doing the album, that was on the bucket list. So I guess I got to actually do the smoking thing. But I mean, look, to get back to the Australia, I mean, Melbourne and Sydney it just seemed like it's just really exploding and overflowing right now in a good way. It's awesome.
And what about I take it South America still huge for you? What about America? How does it take to the Tyas sound?
Well, I think trance music overall is just starting to finally get its groove going in America. Okay. It seems like the cogs have finally aligned correctly, and it seems like people are kind of getting off of that addiction to this very samey long sine wave kick EDM stuff. I got yelled at for using the word EDM, so let's go with big room stuff.
Okay.
I would be super specific. Long sine wave kick, all in the key of G, kick, that genre. And people are finding it's cascading out in other directions. Now, not necessarily all coming to trance, of course, but people are getting, I just heard this techno DJ for the first time. I didn't even know what techno was, or I just heard this trance DJ for the first time. I just heard psytrance or drum and bass or whatever. And they're really, that generation that was being told what to listen to by the radio stations because of radio rotation have now found their own taste, and think that's really good.
And do you think that might bring it back underground, or where do you think that'll lead it? Because the trance scene, it does lend itself to this sort of big stage.
It does.
So do you think it'll stay the big stage, and maybe those progressive house US style guys will move off the big stage, and more Armins and yourselves will move into that space?
It does. I really do wonder. You got to look at some of the, I won't even name names, but you got to look at some of the big room acts and big progressive house acts and deep house acts. They're not, their PR company and their management is not going to be happy if they see that their genre is slowly getting phased out and trance is coming in. They're going to go and release in the trance category, of course, or they're going to release tracks in trance that are clearly not trance and really confuse people what different types of music are.
What do you see what Beatport's labeling will come up with? That's always a good one. And the radio show still going strong? Is it something you're still very passionate about doing?
Yeah, actually, it's been better than ever, actually. It's back to weekly, of course, Degenerate Radio, and every Monday night on DI. So it's and of course the next day goes to podcast and SoundCloud versions and all that. And that keeps me, number one, with the radio show that's weekly, you have to listen to every promo you get, because if you don't, you're not going to have enough music for the show. Let's be honest, finding anywhere from 12 to 16 tracks or 17 tracks a week that are good, it's difficult.
And do you change the track list every week? You don't play the same track twice?
I try not to repeat as much as possible. Now, needless to say, I was shamelessly plugging the shit out of my album in the weeks leading up to it, so that was a lot of repeats there. But for the most part, it's just I try not to repeat tracks. I really want to keep it fresh, and there's a reason to go play the next episode in your iPhone or whatever,
Okay, you're consuming new stuff. So the album's out. Where do you go? Do you feel a little bit empty? Do you feel like, geez, what do you do now? It's a bit like, Well,
it's funny. I rewarded myself from release day to today. Well, probably to a couple days ago. Now I'm back on working on tracks. But I said, you know what? I'm not opening up any projects that I had started. I'm just doing sound design for 3 weeks. That's my vacation.
Yeah.
and it's been awesome. It's been so, I spent literally, one of the days was actually literally a full 12-hour studio day working on one bass patch, one whole signal chain.
Brilliant. See, I think that's so important, because that reinvigorates you. It gets you away from the whole arranging thing, and then you have this sort of huge sound palette ready to go, and you go.
That's the thing. You just save the racks, save the preset, and this is like, you have this artillery that when you come back to the track production, it's like, ready to go.
Yeah.
Plug and play. Because sound design and track making and arrangement don't really go together very well. They're very counterproductive to each.
Yeah.
So if you can get your sound design, there's that guy, Il Gates.
Who's that? No, I don't know.
He does a lot of Il Gates does a lot of like like seminars based on being more productive in the studio, also Ableton based, and he was very interesting. He said something about do your sound design on one day and don't even touch your production, and then go make your tracks on a different day with all the stuff you've just created. And it's great advice. He also said put your phone on the other fucking side of the house, which is also good advice, but I don't follow that one. I should.
I definitely. I used to sit and make sound design and effects and build ups for a couple of days, and the tracks always after that were so much better. There were much better tracks and much better productions. You were invigorated doing it.
You really, really are, and I love good sound design days where you're on trying to make a particular sound that's in your head, and you're like, I gotta do it, and the day starts, and it's pretty shitty. You're getting a little depressed, and you're getting down on yourself because you haven't nailed that sound, and then at the end of the day, you get it. You walk it out. I'm like, bottle of wine gets opened. I'm celebrating already.
Brilliant. Dude, so what can we expect in 2016? What's coming up for the rest of the year? What festivals can we see you at? What's the plans?
Oh, let's see. Definitely some of the bigger festivals in Europe. I don't think any announcements are probably allowed just yet, but let's just say the good ones.
Okay, the big ones.
I'm doing a family vacation right smack dab in America in the middle of the summer with my girls and everything. So I probably more American shows during that particular thing, because I'm still going to take gigs on the weekend. Why not? You're there
absolutely.
when in Rome.
Yeah.
I just got back from Asia, and I gotta be honest, I don't even know where I am half the time. Let's take a look at the schedule, actually. Coming up this weekend's awesome. I don't have to fly anywhere. I'm playing in Zurich for an In Trance We Trust party, and there's another In Trance We Trust in Dublin coming up in a couple of weeks. Over to Paris, France, my first time ever playing there, which I'm really excited about. So thrown by a crew, Trance in France. How cute!
Trance in France.
And then over to Argentina in a few weeks. So definitely coming up. Like, it's looking like the summer is going to be boiling up pretty busy.
Brilliant. Sean, thank you so much for joining us in Sonic Academy. I wanted to say congratulations on an immense album. Anybody watching this, please go on to Spotify, go on to iTunes, check it out. It is Degeneration. It is genuinely has raised the bar of albums. I glad, if it took 10 years to get to this point, it was well worth the wait. That's all I can say, dude. I'm blown away by it. It will stay on my playlist for the next while. I thank you for joining us in Sonic Academy.
Dude, it was my pleasure, and thank you for saying that, man. Your check is in the mail. That was really awesome. That was a good experience. I like this.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us in Sonic Academy. Thanks, Sean, for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us, and we'll see you all very soon on Sonic Academy. Cheers, and bye for now.
Bye, guys.